Right, welcome everybody. We have this morning potentially 3 presentations, but we're starting with the second one, which is from Michelle Vaughan, Mairin, Parbatic, Dunghana, Jack Whitehead and Jacqueline Delong. And we have 2 people in the room and 4 people on screen, including one that you can see at the moment who's speaking. And so I will give you a 5-minute warning. You've got a quarter of an hour in theory. Okay. And then we have the 20-minute slot, but given that the first speaker isn't here, you probably got a bit longer. Okay, great.
Lovely. Thank you. Well, good morning. We're very excited to be presenting our research. We can put up the first slide, and the topic for our presentation and our research is the role of values in our global context. And we're going to get to that slide in a minute. I'm Jackie Delong.
I'm Maureen Glenn.
Maureen's from the Republic of Ireland, and I'm from Canada. And I live just about an hour west of Toronto. So when you say you're from Canada, it's a very big place. And delighted to be in Sweden. So this is the subject of our research. We are recording this morning. This is for our own research. In our research, we use a great deal of digital visual data. And this is the kind of data we use to do our assessment after the fact to see if we've done what we were supposed to do. And our colleagues are here with us, and they will also tell us whether we've done what we were supposed to do. Okay.
Great. We had planned for this to be a symposium when we put our application in the round slot. So we're going to talk at a rate of knots, but we're kind of glad that maybe some of the pitch didn't turn up, because we had months of planning put into this. And all of a sudden then we realized, oh my goodness, we've only 15 minutes, so we're happy enough. Okay.
In the session, these are the questions we're going to address. What is the role of values in our global context? Why should values be foundational in educational research? In what ways can values be integrated into educational research? And if you have your phone, that QR code will take you directly to the slides, which are on Jack Whitehead's website, actionresearch.net, which has a plethora of information about what we're up to. There are no secrets in the work. It's all on Jack's website. So this is the gang, and Jack is going to speak to this.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie. Yeah, it's really good to be here. What I'd like you to do is, if you look at that slide, and what you might just see are a number of smiling faces, and that's all you might see. Whereas if we're looking now at values, which we integrate within our educational research, what we claim is that we are expressing something which Parbatic will emphasize about a flow of cosmic energy, which is embodied in who we are, but it's actually flowing through us and actually the values that we hold. And you can't do anything without flows of energy. But these are very rarely recognized within our educational research. And that's why we use a lot of digital video, because we believe that communicating the values that each one of you hold and explain your practice using the values, you've each got your own unique constellation of values. But unless you actually show those emerging over time in practice, we really will not understand the meaning of those embodied values. So that's why if you look at that image, do please have a look at that, because values are not just things that are positive. Conflict in the world can involve values. And what we're doing from different parts of the world, whether it's Canada, the USA, Nepal, UK, Ireland, is to actually work together collaboratively with the values that we believe count towards the flourishing of humanity. And that's why this image is there, not just as a pleasant photograph, but actually communicates where each one of us is seeing ourselves expressing those values which we believe commit ourselves to living the values of human flourishing. Is that okay, Jackie?
Very good, Jack. Thank you. So first question, what is the role of values in our global context? Jack shares that conflicting values are causing terrible wars in our world, and he sees the role of values in our global context to be contributing to the spread of values of human flourishing, rather than those that are contributing to the negation of those values. This means accepting an educational responsibility for accounting for human flourishing. Mairin, my pal here, says that values are the foundation upon which we build our lives in education. They give, or should give, us a firm footing to guide us through our educational lives. Michelle from Florida believes that in order for humanity to flourish, individuals should take on the individual work of understanding their own values so they may contribute meaningfully to humanity. I think that values that follow what Stephen Covey calls true north principles need to be shared and made explicit as the basis for working together. The explicit is important. Parbatic, can you explain what you mean by values as cosmic energy?
Thank you. For me, cosmic energy, values are cosmic energy, like it flows within me when I engage in the collaborative activities. And the way I work with the people around, like in this conference as well, I'm working with the team, and in this way, I experience a kind of energy within, and that makes me alive and work further in the benefit of self and other. Thank you.
Thank you, Parvati.
Okay, so I'm going to look at the next question. And the next question is, why should values be foundational in educational research? Okay, so that's the second of our three questions. So I believe as human beings, our values inform every thought we have and every action we take and every reflection we undertake. And so you can see on the slide behind what my colleagues believe and why my colleagues believe that values are foundational in educational research. And you can check them out yourself because the slides will be on Jack's website. Michelle, for example, believes that we have a responsibility to unearth our values. And I believe that I agree with her myself. In fact, there are those who believe that even traditional positivistic ways of doing research are grounded in people's values, even though they don't really acknowledge it. Very often, though, we're unaware of what our values are and how they might guide how we think and how we live. So I think it's important for us as human beings, regardless of research even, it's important for us to be aware of what our values are and to know what drives us and to be aware of what inspires us. So unlike other forms of research that try to divorce humanity and human values from research, when we engage in living educational theory research, we embrace our humanity and we overtly examine our own unique constellation of values to see how they give meaning and purpose to our lives. And as Jackie was saying, we engage in learning through our values that carry hope for the flourishing of humanity. So I believe our values are the foundations upon which we base our thinking, our actions, our reflections, and they're also the basis for our research. And our values also provide us with the overarching principles towards which we aspire. And so because our values are so important, they're both foundational and inspirational, we really need to develop an awareness of them and how they influence our actions or not. So I believe that values lie at the heart of what it means to be human. And I believe that our ontological and epistemological values lie at the heart of our educational research. Nowadays, we seem to be just swamped with speedy research and a demand for incessant publication. It seems just to be the way of life in academia. So the impact of marketization on educational researchers, as well as that audit culture, have had a really adverse impact on how we think about education and educational research. So our question, why should values be foundational in educational research? I think values-led and values-based approaches to research disrupt that ever-growing emphasis that we have on mindless hamster wheel types of research. It calls it out, it calls their bluff. But more importantly, I think values-based and values-led educational research should be foundational because it works from the starting point of everyday human life and works outwards towards the flourishing of humanity. Okay, so we're moving on to our third question, which is, in what ways can values be integrated into educational research? Okay, so we're going to call in our colleague, Michelle Vaughan. So Michelle is in Florida, and at the moment she is asleep in bed, but she has recorded her response to this, in what ways values can be integrated into educational research. Okay. Okay, so here we go.
Our school community has been both shocked and saddened by the conflict in Ukraine, with innocent lives being and continuing to be lost every day.
We try it again.
Hi,
This is Michelle.
my name is Michelle Vaughan, and I'm an associate professor at Florida Atlantic University in the US. It's a pleasure to be part of this group today to talk about values-based inquiries in global context. And I have no doubt that you have learned a lot already from our presenters. And seeing as it's 3 in the morning where I live, we've decided that perhaps I can participate in the group by taping a little bit on how I apply values in the research being conducted in my own specific context. To start, I work from values of care and connection. And in my current role, I primarily work with graduate students who are seeking advanced degrees in curriculum instruction, as well as teachers who are working in our K-8 laboratory school who are part of a unique research group. In both of these contexts, I really seek to empower those students that I work with to find their own voice and figure out how they can contribute to educational research, which for me, I believe is sorely lacking their perspective and the unique data that they bring. So I do this by creating cultures of inquiry where groups can get together in a safe space and discuss their own values and how they show up in their practice. In these spaces, I really serve as a facilitator and a participant, because I am constantly researching my own values and their impact on the world around me. Evidence of the impact of these cultures of inquiry can be seen for you all in 2 distinct ways. First, the group of my doctoral students is there at CARN presenting about our recent culture of inquiry experience later on in the conference, so I really encourage you to check them out. Additionally, you can read about their work in the latest issue of eJolts, which can be found at Jack's website on actionresearch.net or through some of the links in this presentation. As our presenters have likely mentioned, for me, I can't imagine working in this space without investigating my own values and how they impact the world around me, and also how they impact my students. Thank you so much for listening, and Jackie will have likely mentioned this already, but you are always welcome to join this group and continue working with us.
Okay, so that was Michelle.
So you missed the beginning. I think she said, that we figured out the best way for her to contribute was by recording because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But in addition, they just came through that hurricane. So, it actually worked out well that she wasn't coming.
We're going to say more about this, or is that enough to say enough? Is that enough?
Well,
Yeah.
the only link that I think maybe we've missed at this point is that the values-based inquiries that we are engaged in follow Jack Whitehead's living educational theory process, in which the individual creates her own living educational theory using his or her values as explanatory principles to explain the nature of their influence on themselves and others. And that Jack created that in the early 70s, based on his own experience in a high school science class. And that his website, actionresearch.net, is full of, it's a repository of living educational theories from some 50 doctoral theses through to masters and pretty much all of our publications, like Mairin.
Yeah.
And so I think that link needs to be made. And so we are all engaged in living educational theory, which as a methodology is not prescriptive, except that it is a self-study. So it's I at the center. B, it engages in action reflection cycle. It uses values as explanatory principles. And in some way, we are expected to be contributing to improving the world, to adding to human flourishing. Did I cover
Yeah,
that?
I think so, yeah. So I hope you got that kind of feeling from what we've been saying so far. Okay, so we're drawing to an end, but we'd actually love to hear your own ideas. So these are just our references. And this is Jack Whitehead and Jackie's book here. And again, if you click on your QR thing, you'll pick up the link.
Let's go back and let's talk a second about eJolt. So this reference here to eJolt is the Educational Journal of Living Theories. And it's now in 12th year of publication. And it is several volumes, 2 volumes a year for the last 12 years of people conducting living educational research and articles based on their experiences around the world. So it's a really good place to go if you're kind of starting out and you want to see what does it look like in terms of how it does affect people's lives. And the NERI website, over to you.
So the NERI website is, I'm involved with NERI, which is the what is it? The Network for Educational Action Research in Ireland. So I'm one of the co-conveners of it. And just brain freeze. So it's a network for people who are interested in educational action research. And people come together and we have meetings 3 times a year. And it's kind of a safe space for people to come and share their research. So we generally kind of mix up experts and people who are just beginning, dipping their toes in action research.
And this is the president of ESAI with us today.
So I'm also the president of the Education Studies Association of Ireland. Okay, we're going to move on. So the questions we were hoping to discuss, and I know we've only got a few minutes, these are the questions here. Our email addresses are there if anybody wants to contact us. We'll get the ball rolling in 1 second. If you don't get an opportunity to say to us what you want to say about these questions, the 3 questions, are these the 3 questions? These, oh yes, there's 2 questions. If you use your QR code, it'll bring you to a Google Doc and you can pop in your questions there and we will try to address them. Okay, how are we doing time-wise?
You're fine because the other person isn't here. So
Okay, right.
you've got about a quarter of an hour of discussion because the final person, if the final person turns up, you've lost 20, there's another 20,
Yeah,
doesn't turn up, you've another 20
We've got
minutes. So
I hope the third presenter would come because Retty said so. She had seen her yesterday. So, but as Rosie, she's not coming. So
Right.
you can take up her
so,
time as well.
so
Yeah.
if I suggest you go until say 25 to 10, and then that allows that other person to come in and settle.
That's great, thank you. It's so funny because we planned for a longer session anyway. It just seems as though the fates are working.
So just a reminder to Jack and Parbatic, We'd like you to come in on the questions, and people can address them to either Maureen or myself, Jackie, or Jack, or Parbatic, who is in Nepal. And Jack is in the UK. I think you're in Cumbria.
I'm in Cumbria.
Yes, and Jack is at visiting fellow at the University of Cumbria.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So the first question we're going to look at is, what values do you see in your research? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this and see if I can get exercise. Here we are.
So, are you going to facilitate the discussion? Or?
Yes, we are. Jackie's going to.
Unless you're dying to, Jane.
Yes.
Okay, so those are just some suggested questions, but if you have some questions, especially if they're things we haven't covered, I mean, we didn't get into definitions of what we mean by theory or why we use digital data or any number of others. So please feel free to ask us pretty much anything. And if you could just say your name and where you're from, it will kind of help the dialogue.
I have a comment. Hi, I'm Lorena. I'm from the University of the Incarnate Word in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh.
And if you know about the legislation going on in Texas, there's a huge attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion at the moment. So it's really refreshing to see what other people are doing over the world, and I appreciate how much you take the individual into account, because there's a misconception in the States, at least, that when students walk through the door, they kind of have to separate who they are from their like researcher professionalism or their stance. When that's not the truth. When I come in through the door, I bring all of me into the room, my lived experiences, my culture. So I just really appreciate what y'all are doing, and I would like to very much connect after this.
Fantastic. So I'm interested, Jack and Parbatic, did you hear what our speaker?
Yes, that was clear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear to me as well.
Yeah.
Any comments?
Only to encourage the last speaker to continue a connection with us so that we can share your explanation of your educational influence in your own learning and the learning of students, because we're all faced with something that we call creative compliance, which is that recognition that we're all subjected to pressures which do tend to deny our values. And we've got to find a way of living with integrity within those contexts. And I think you're in a similar context, but we would like you to actually work with us to make public your educational influences as you work within that context.
And really, you need support when you're living in that kind of a context. I mean, Michelle, who's in Florida, says the same thing, that it's the supportive community that makes it possible for her to take the risk that she does. And so, I mean, there's tremendous pressure, in particular in your own country right now. And you need a supportive community. So we'd love to continue this conversation.
Do you know Parker, not know, but have you read any of the stuff of Parker Palmer? No, so he says the teaching, so I am involved with teachers and teacher education. He says teaching mirrors the soul, and you know, what you act out in your teaching is what you are as a person, you know. So it must be very difficult for you doing your research and putting the person you are and the culture you hold to one side as you're doing this kind of separated type of research. Yeah,
For sure. And I'm a PhD student. I don't think I mentioned that. But I wish to go into teaching as well, so
okay.
definitely need a good support
Can you say your name again?
Lorena Sesto.
Lorena. And that's what I do. I coach doctoral students around the world. I'm a former superintendent of education in Canada, and then a professor at Brock University. And now I volunteer my time to help people in situations such as your own. As a supervisor, there's so much on your plate, and I'm not a supervisor. I'm a coach and a cheerleader and an editor and, you know, that guide on the side. And that's what I do with my time now. And when I come to conferences like this, it's all, you know, at my own cost because I have had so much wonderful support in my life, including Jack Whitehead, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm from Greenland, from the University of Greenland, of the nurse education. And maybe I do not address your questions, but I couldn't. You work explicitly with the values, and we agree that there are values everywhere. You told me that when you enter a room, there's values there. But I was just reflecting upon the values that are not conscious to us. And in Greenland, I'm Danish, and I was part of the colonial country in those days. And there are people up there that are angry with me. Because I lived in the time when we took children to Denmark, and they are not aware of their anger. So how I just want to reflect with you, how can we address those issues? Because I can feel it's hidden inside. When I enter the room, when they see me, and how it is to be friends with the researcher and people up there.
Right. I remember I chaired your session at CARN last year. It was
some years ago, maybe.
How many? Oh, was it not last year or the year before? Maybe.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
But it was really interesting, you know, and very complex. And you were talking about the complexities of the work you do. Very, very interesting. But you know, Jack Whitehead is this, you know, he talks about that we experience ourselves as living contradictions, you know, that sometimes the values we hold are not the ones that we can enact or do enact in our everyday lives. And, you know, sometimes the things that stop us from acting in our lives are maybe ourselves and our own hang-ups and ideas, but other times there's something external to ourselves as well, you know, and they're interesting. I don't know why I'm talking about you, Jack, when you're actually here.
No. I mean, I'm also really impressed with the last speaker's point, because that idea of living contradictions, we do need the help of others to reveal the values that sometimes we're not conscious of living. And that idea of decolonizing, you know, using a decolonizing methodology is very important to us. But I would emphasize that there is something that we're not paying attention to in a way, and that is with Parbatic from Nepal, those ideas of the Eastern wisdom traditions, that sometimes we're not aware of just how much that relational dynamic between us can actually be brought in. For example, as Parbatic uses the Eastern notion of chakras as the energy flowing values that we actually all live by. So I would encourage the conversation from the last speaker, especially as you've chaired the session, Maureen, but let's actually connect and sustain a connection from this meeting.
Just to plug up, Parvati and I are doing a session on Saturday at noon, and she's going to talk further about chakras. So if you...
Yeah, I would just like to say that it's not just Eastern wisdom, it's also indigenous wisdom, including in Greenland, I suspect, where, like I was talking about yesterday.
And it resonated with us so much. We name it in Eastern terminology as chakras or cosmic energy or consciousness or whatever, but that has been part of indigenous wisdom for so many thousands of years that we have had oppressed in the last 400 odd years. And if we can include that way of knowing in the work we do, even though it might seem a bit woo-woo, it's important because it starts to change what we value. We don't just value the material, we value other aspects of life. Parvati, would you like to make a comment on that?
Yeah, it feels really good to talk about the chakras and Eastern wisdom traditional perspective. Definitely, like there are so many discussion regarding indigenous ways of knowing and the multiple perspective of wisdom traditional. There are so many perspective like Vedic perspective, and there are yogic perspectives, and practitioners, they have multiple perspective based on their experiential knowledge or learning. So if we discuss in this aspect, there we can have a lot of discussion. But to talk about cosmic energy in as a value here in my context, it is very much embedded within the culture of the institution, and it's all around there, whether we name it collaboration or cooperation. But the way we work with other people, cooperating, connecting, and sharing our knowledge and practices, respecting their indigenous ways of knowing, so that makes our work more like doable. Let's say it's very easy for us to do what we have been doing, and it will help us to make things better in different aspects. So of course, there are so many competitive ways of doing and working, but when we talk about collaboration, and that brings a kind of energy within us, and like for example, I tell 1 + 1 = 11, not 2. So that makes what collaboration makes us doing us differently. Yeah, thank you.
The other thing I would point out is that one of the things that I have worked on, and Michelle talked about it, is building cultures of inquiry. And what I mean by that is groups where it's safe and comfortable and democratic, where you can be vulnerable and talk about your values, you know, in a safe, supportive environment. And I think that's what we all need to take the risks that are required of us on a daily basis. And so that's one of the strategies that I've used over the years that I've found extremely effective.
Okay, so we're coming to our closing seconds. Has anybody here any other questions or any points you'd like to make? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jan. I have a question around how, as a white South African, I completely understand about carrying the legacy of your forefathers. But how do you stop those values almost influencing your research too much? In other words, making it too subjective? How do you keep that objectivity so that you are able to balance your values against the more scientific part of your research?
Jack is smiling. I think
Jack is smiling. We can go ahead, Jack.
Very, very quickly, okay. We have validation routes between 3 to 8 people, and that we draw questions from Habermas's critical theory. We ask each other's response to the explanations. How can we make it more comprehensible? How can we strengthen the evidence that we use to justify our claims to know? How do we improve our socio-cultural and socio-historical understandings? And the last one is, how do we improve the authenticity of our explanations to show that we're living our values as fully as possible? But that's a crucial question about how to move from being intersubjective criticism to enhance the objectivity of the explanation.
And you can't do it alone. Okay, I mean, this relies on having people give you feedback. So you make claims, for example, you know, I've improved my practice in mentoring in the following ways, and then you say back to me, well, where's the evidence? Show me the data that's evidence to support your claim to know. And that's how this process becomes very much validated and strengthened by others working with you to help you.
I think you know, working with values-led and values-based research, it's just like, I think there's double the rigor, if not 3 times the rigor of regular, you know, scientific traditional forms of research, because there's so much checking and rechecking and talking and dialogue. We have to draw to a clear, Jacqueline.
Okay, so
I want to add one more line here.
okay,
be very quick.
Yeah, quick. Yes. In my research, PhD research context, like at that time, nothing worked, but only my living value worked in my context. Like when there is nothing, then it remains a value, and that value worked very well in the context. So I think that is the thing which we can understand, uncover as an underlying curriculum of the research that is value for me. Thank you.
Great. I think that's a good note to finish on.
Sure.
Thank you to our guys far away, Jack and Parbatic.
Thanks for coming.
And thank you guys for coming. It's been lovely to share the space with you this morning. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for finishing, but we still haven't got the last speaker.
I know, but I mean, for us, we're
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you.